Welcome to Tech for Good Made Easy. I'm your host, Randy Paynter, and today I'm going to show you how to create images from just a few words of text, like this. Unfortunately, that beautiful field does not exist other than in digital format. So why would you want to create images from text? First, because it's really cool, but maybe more importantly, because you can potentially create any kind of image you can imagine, or at least describe. We all know how important emotionally compelling images are in fundraising. Imagine if you can create an image that translates the narratives you want to tell into powerful visual content. Second, because creating high-quality visual content traditionally has cost a lot of money. At the minimum, you needed a graphic designer, maybe a photographer, or at least pay for stock photos. Text-to-image AI can produce quality images at a fraction of the cost. And third, text-to-image can be done super fast, as I'll show you momentarily, which is great for rapid prototyping and crisis response. I know there's quite a bit of conversation about copyrights and what constitutes ethical use of AI images, so if you're interested in learning a bit more about that, please stick around for after the demos, as I'll briefly discuss those issues then. I've hesitated in doing this episode because AI image creation has been evolving so rapidly. 6 months ago, I would have advised you that it just wasn't ready for prime time. But I think a few of these services are now good enough that they're worth experimenting with, and you may find some of them meet your needs. In fact, Meta, parent company of Facebook, released their image generator yesterday, and I just reviewed it, and I'm really impressed. So there are 5 image generation services that I'm going to discuss today. The first is OpenAI's DALL-E3, DALL-E, get it? Which is what you'll be using if you use either ChatGPT or Microsoft Bing. Second, Firefly, which is an Adobe product. Third, MidJourney. Fourth, Stable Diffusion. And fifth, the brand new Imagine from Meta. All 5 of these services allow you to create an image from a brief text description and then edit it. However, each of these is using a different back-end solution, and thus each has its pros and cons. I wish there were a single one that I could recommend above all the others, but as you'll see, what's best for one person may not be best for someone else. So let's go through them one by one. First, ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid version of ChatGPT, has now integrated the DALL-E3 image generator into their chatbot, so you no longer need to use a plugin. Today, you can simply ask ChatGPT to create an image. For these demos, I'm going to attempt to create the same image across all 5 of the image generation platforms I mentioned, so you can do a visual comparison. You'll also see that it takes a bit of work to get any of them to produce what you're looking for. I'm going to create a silly image, which has some complexity to it, which I think will provide some insights into the pros and cons of the various services. The image I'm going to attempt to create should look like a photo of a sun bear wearing a scarf driving a yellow convertible. The reason I'm using this silly image is that there are a lot of variables that will likely be relevant no matter what types of images your organization needs. First, it should look like a photo. This is a big deal because most nonprofits use emotionally compelling photos in their advocacy. Yet, as you'll see, most of these image generation engines struggle to create images that look like real photos. Second, the bear is not just any bear, it's a sun bear. So it's a specific and fairly uncommon subject matter. And third, it's wearing a scarf, which I've never seen a sun bear wear, so there are no real-world examples of this that the systems have been trained on. And fourth, the bear should be driving, not just sitting in a yellow convertible, which is a concept that requires the AI to have a pretty deep understanding of the components of the image. That's a lot of details and concepts that the system needs to understand to produce the image, which no one has ever taken an actual photo of, to the best of my knowledge. So I'm first going to go to ChatGPT Plus, which is the paid version, and ask it to create a photo, sun bear wearing a scarf, driving a yellow convertible. And this is what I get. That's not exactly what I was hoping for. It actually gets many of the components correct, but it looks like some sort of cartoony, jaundiced panda bear, which is definitely not what I want. But don't despair, we can do better. I'm confident the problem was the quality of my prompt, not the potential of the DALL-E3 image generator. So when in doubt, what do? We ask ChatGPT for help. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to write a better prompt for me. I'll type, I want to create what looks like a photo of a sun bear driving a yellow convertible while wearing a scarf. What is the prompt I should use? And of course, ChatGPT writes the prompt for me. You can see that it expanded a lot on my initial request, but in particular, I want to point out this part here where you see it references the type of camera, lens, and aperture setting for the photo. The reason it's recommending I use this in my prompt is because a lot of the images that were used to train the AI model came from the photo sharing site Flickr, which includes a lot of metadata or information on the photos. So if you include this type of information in your request, the AI says, I understand what you want to create. You want to create an image that looks a lot like other images that have this associated information. Now, I'm going to create a new chat session and copy and paste that prompt into the ChatGPT chat box and hit enter. Okay, so that looks pretty amazing. It's got most of the components I was asking for. There's a bear with a scarf, and it's in the driver's seat of a yellow convertible. However, as a wildlife lover, it's kind of bugging me that it doesn't really look like a sun bear, which has darker fur with golden patches of fur on their chest, which some people say resembles a rising sun, thus the name sun bear. So I'm going to tell ChatGPT, sun bears have darker fur. Awesome. So this image is much better. It's not exactly photorealistic, but in my experience, this is about as good as you're going to see currently using the DALL-E3 image generator. The bear looks much more like a sun bear now, but for some reason it's wearing the scarf on its head, which may be fine for a bear, but I'd prefer it if the scarf were around the neck. So I'm going to modify this again, and I'm going to ask, now put the scarf around the bear's neck. And that's interesting. So you're going to see this a lot. I asked it to make a small change with the positioning of the scarf, and it created an entirely new image. I'm going to stop there with this demo, but hopefully that at least gives you some ideas on how to get started with text-to-image generation on ChatGPT. It takes quite a bit of trial and error, and it's hard to get a good photorealistic image, but this could certainly work for some use cases, and I'm quite confident this will continue to improve rapidly in the months ahead. Now, let's switch to Firefly, which is the Adobe text-to-image generator. If your organization already subscribes to Adobe's Creative Cloud suite of services that include Photoshop, Adobe Acrobat, Premiere Pro, and others, you should already have access to this new product called Firefly. Starting on the Firefly homepage, I'm going to paste that prompt I used for ChatGPT into the text box here and click the Generate button. Firefly gives us 4 options to choose from. Clearly, their AI is getting a bit confused by the concept of a bear driving a convertible, but the quality of the images is actually pretty good. I'm going to hit refresh down here, which will generate 4 new images so we can see if it can come up with some better options. Okay, well, at least this time the bear looks like it could be driving, and the bear itself looks pretty close to photorealistic. Just one other area to check out if you have access to Firefly are the options on the right side of the screen. They provide a number of different effects you can apply to your image. Most of them are fairly artsy, which may or may not work for your organization, but they also have this hyper-realistic one, which can help some images look a bit more like a photo. So the main takeaway for Firefly is it's a great option for those of you who already have a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud. But I think ChatGPT with DALL-E3 is similar enough that there's no need to pay for Firefly if you're already paying for ChatGPT Plus. Next, let's jump to MidJourney. These guys launched back in mid-2022, and it's one of the best-known text-to-image services because they were an early leader and have a lot of very vocal supporters. That said, the MidJourney text-to-image generator is only accessible via Discord, which is basically an instant messaging app developed for gamers. So I'm not going to even demo MidJourney because using Discord is just a bad experience for those of us who are not gamers. And this podcast is supposed to be tech for good made easy. However, if you're already a Discord user, I recommend trying out MidJourney as it's a pretty powerful solution. If you spend enough time tweaking the images, you can get some pretty good results. Here's an example of an image I produced on my first try. It looks more like my 16-year-old chocolate lab than a sun bear, and clearly it didn't understand the concept of a convertible, but I did a few more iterations and was eventually able to produce this one, which is the most photorealistic bear we've seen yet. It made the scarf rather than the convertible yellow, but at least it got the bear driving. The main takeaway for MidJourney is it has a lot of potential, but be prepared for some challenges using Discord if you're not already familiar with it. Next example, Stable Diffusion, which is a text-to-image generator from Stability.ai. The easiest way to get to it is to go to the Stability.ai homepage, then click on the button currently labeled Try SDXL Turbo, which is the version they just released. When you click on the Enter Your Prompt field, it will take you to this new page where you'll see the prompt entry box and a place where the image will show above. I'm going to paste our prompt in, and what you'll see is this is probably the most photorealistic version yet. Now, it's got a weird, maybe 7-fingered paw on the door frame, but you'll notice oddities like this pop up in all these models from time to time. The one other thing I'll point out about Stable Diffusion is how incredibly quickly it renders images. Literally, as you type, you'll see it update the images. This is a big difference from the other services that usually take at least a few seconds to render. Finally, Imagine by Meta, which was just announced yesterday and is now available to try out. To get to this, you go to imagine.meta.com. The interface should be quite familiar to you by now. I'm going to paste in my prompt and let's see what we get. Impressive. This may be the most photorealistic yet, and it seems to have understood the prompt, and it renders fast. As I said at the start, this space is moving incredibly fast. So here are the 5 different models we looked at. They all have their pros and cons, and which you decide to use may depend on a variety of factors. One thing that we can be sure of is that these are going to get better and better, and soon they'll be offering text to video with voice as well. These are just incredible times we live in. Final point, I want to briefly touch on the topic of the ethical use of these text-to-image generators. This is really a much bigger topic than I have time for here, and the focus of this podcast is really about helping nonprofit professionals to get started trying these new technologies. But I think it's important to at least have some context for the conversations that many are having around the moral issues of using AI-generated images. Honestly, I think it's a pretty similar topic to the use of using text-only AI solutions, but as a picture is worth 1,000 words, the ethical questions may be more obvious with images. To simplify, I'd say there are 4 primary areas to consider. First, intellectual property. In AI image generation, this is a concern because these systems can replicate or modify existing artworks with no credit or compensation. This is a complex topic because the way AI is trained probably falls outside of traditional copyright laws. It's not like these systems store a copy of the photo or book in a database. They're actually storing the relationships between words and pixels with billions of other words and pixels from other sources. It's definitely not as black and white an issue as it may seem at first, but it's also important to consider. Second, social justice and representation. AI-generated images can inadvertently perpetuate stereotypes or underrepresent minority groups, making it essential for nonprofits to ensure these technologies promote fair and diverse portrayals. Third, misinformation and advocacy. The ease of creating realistic but synthetic images using AI poses a significant risk of spreading misinformation, which impacts the integrity of advocacy campaigns and public perception. Is it okay to help refugees with an image that represents their plight without having an actual photo? Does disclosing that an image is AI generated make it okay? And the fourth area to consider is supporting human creativity and labor. With AI's growing capability to generate art, there's a risk of undervaluing human and artists and creators, making it important for nonprofits to advocate for and support human creativity alongside technological advancement. If an organization can have more impact with less staff, what are the implications for that? These are complex, incredibly nuanced, and rapidly changing issues we're all going to have to face in the months and years ahead. That's all we have time for today, so if you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and let your colleagues know. If you have comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes, you can DM me on X, formerly known as Twitter, @Paynter, that's Painter with a Y, or please post your comments below. We're just getting started and want to hear your feedback to make sure you're getting a lot of value out of this. Thank you and have an amazing day.